Imagine, just for a second, that you are so unspeakably wealthy that you don't just buy a football team. You wake up, look out at the desert, and decide you want to buy the entire concept of human competitive spirit. You don't want a club, you want to buy football itself. Welcome to the Saudi Pro League, the most expensive $2 billion midlife crisis in the history of the human race. We all remember the absolute fever dream of 2023, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, or the PIF, which is basically a sovereign wealth fund sitting on $900 billion of oil money, decided they were tired of just sponsoring things. They wanted to own the game, backed up a convoy of dump trucks full of cash to the front doors of Europe's biggest stars. Ronaldo here is $200 million a year. Neymar. Here's a private Boeing 747, a 25-room mansion, a zoo full of exotic animals, and $160 million. Benzema, Conte, Sadio Mane, they spent a staggering $2 billion in a matter of months, basically playing real-life FIFA career mode, with the financial sliders hacked to 999%. They promised a new era, a complete shift in the tectonic plates of global sports, but fast forward to today, and the Grand Saudi experiment is looking less like a masterclass in global dominance, and more like a wildly expensive televised disaster. The stadiums are empty, the TV ratings are practically non-existent, and the players are desperately trying to escape the golden prison. Today, we are looking at how Saudi Arabia wasted $2 billion and why the biggest financial flex in sports history completely blew up in their faces. Grab your overpriced polyester jerseys, let's dive into the absolute circus that is modern football finance. To understand the sheer magnitude of this failure, we have to understand the unadulterated madness of the initial spending spree. The Saudi PIF didn't just invest in the league, they effectively nationalized the four biggest clubs in the country: Al Nassr, Al Hilal, Al Ittihad, and Al Ahly. Imagine if the US government suddenly bought the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Cowboys, and the Lakers, and said, "Alright boys, budget is a myth, buy everything." Their strategy wasn't to build a sustainable football pyramid. Their strategy was to buy relevancy through brute force financial trauma. When they signed Cristiano Ronaldo at the end of 2022, it was shocking, but it kinda made sense. He was older, he had beef with Manchester United, and he is a walking, talking, ab-flexing billboard. But the summer of 2023 was when the mask came off. They didn't just want retirees, they wanted players in their absolute prime. They offered Kylian Mbappe $1 billion for 1 year of work. 1 year, that's $2.7 million a day. You could literally buy a new Ferrari every morning, crash it into a wall for fun by lunch, and still be a millionaire by dinner time. Mbappe turned them down, which takes a level of willpower that science cannot explain, but plenty of others took the bait. Jordan Henderson torched his entire reputation as a champion of human rights to go play in a country where being gay is a crime, just so he could secure the bag. Neymar took the money and immediately tore his ACL, spending the next year getting paid millions to play Counter-Strike in a mansion. For about 3 months, the European football establishment was terrified. It looked like Saudi Arabia was going to successfully buy the sport, but there was one tiny, microscopic, hilarious flaw in their $2 billion master plan. You can buy the best actors in the world, you can build the most expensive stage, and you can buy the best lighting equipment, but none of that matters if the theater is completely empty. The Saudi Pro League expected the world to tune in. They expected packed stadiums of screaming, fanatical supporters. What got was an eerie, depressing ghost town. Let's look at the actual numbers, because they are so bad they are almost artistic. While the big derbies between the PIF-owned clubs drew decent crowds, the rest of the league was a barren wasteland. In late 2023, a match between Al Riyadh and Al Khalij drew an attendance of exactly 133 people. 133 people. If you drop your phone in a Walmart, more people will gather around to look at the cracked screen than people who showed up to watch professional athletes who make more in a week than your entire bloodline will make in a century. Imagine being a Champions League winner walking out of the tunnel. The dramatic music is playing, the fireworks go off, and you look up to see a crowd smaller than a local PTA meeting. And the TV ratings were arguably worse. Saudi Arabia practically gave the broadcast rights away for free to various networks around the world just to force people to watch. But nobody cared. Why? Because watching a 39-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo stat pad against a team of part-time accountants and guys whose second job is selling falafel just isn't compelling TV. The fundamental rule of sports entertainment is that the stakes have to matter. You can't artificially manufacture 100 years of tribal rivalry, generational passion, and organic culture with a checkbook. European football is massive because your grandfather supported the club, and his grandfather supported the club. In Saudi Arabia, they tried to microwave a a century of culture in 6 months, and the result was a soggy, unappetizing mess. So, the fans didn't show up, but at least the players were happy, right? I mean, they are swimming in cash, as it turns out. Professional athletes who have spent their entire lives fueled by an insane psychotic level of competitive drive don't actually enjoy playing meaningless friendlies in 110-degree desert heat. Who knew? Enter the Great Exodus. The reality of living in Saudi Arabia hit these players like a freight train. Sure, they lived in ultra-luxurious, westernized compounds, but a golden prison is still a prison. Wives and girlfriends were reportedly miserable due to strict cultural laws and dress codes. The heat made training unbearable, and the lack of professionalism in the league's day-to-day operations was a massive shock to players used to the hyper-optimized military-grade standards of Real Madrid or Liverpool. Jordan Henderson went over there, gave a bunch of PR interviews explaining how he was actually going to grow the game and respect the culture, all while getting paid £700,000 a week. Then he realized playing in front of 400 people in a stadium that feels like the inside of an air fryer is actually a terrible way to spend a Tuesday. He lasted exactly 6 months before he packed his bags, fled to Ajax, and left his reputation in a shallow grave in the desert. Karim Benzema, the reigning Ballon d'Or winner, reportedly went AWOL, clashed with his managers, and desperately tried to get a transfer back to Europe. Aymeric Laporte went on record saying a ton of players were unhappy and felt lied to. The players realized that money can buy comfort, but it cannot buy competitive satisfaction. They were fading into total obscurity. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? If Sadio Mane scores a hat trick in front of 133 people and 0 TV viewers, did it even happen? Now at this point, you might be thinking, are the Saudis actually stupid? Did they really think this would turn a profit? Of course they didn't. You don't amass $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund by being bad at math. They knew this was a financial black hole, because this was never about making money on ticket sales or TV rights. This was the most expensive marketing campaign in human history. This is a concept called sportswashing. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has a plan called Vision 2030. He wants to turn the country into a global tourism and business hub before the world transitions away from oil. But when the average Westerner thinks of Saudi Arabia, they don't think of luxury tourism. They think of strict religious laws, human rights abuses, and journalists being chopped into pieces in embassies. So how do you change that image? You buy the most universally loved thing on the planet, sports. They bought golf with LIV. They bought boxing. They bought Formula 1 races, and they tried to buy football. The goal was that when you Google Saudi Arabia, you don't see geopolitical controversies, you see highlights of Neymar. Did it work? Yes and no. They definitely got the world's attention, but the failure of the Football League proved a hard limit to sports washing. You can buy the PR, but you cannot force consumers to actually care about the product. They spent $2 billion to prove to the world that their league is incredibly boring. That is an objectively terrible ROI. The funniest part about this entire disaster is that we literally just watched this exact same movie play out less than a decade ago. Around 2016, the Chinese Super League did the exact same thing. Backed by the government, Chinese clubs started offering insane money to players like Oscar, Hulk, and Carlos Tevez. Tevez famously went to China, got fat, barely played, made about $40 million a year, and later called his time there a holiday. Everyone panicked that China was taking over football, but a few years later, the government pulled the funding, the clubs went bankrupt, and the league collapsed back into total irrelevance. Saudi Arabia is just the Chinese Super League. With a bigger budget and slightly better PR, it is an artificial bubble inflated by state money. The moment the PIF decides they are bored of their expensive toy, or the moment they pivot their marketing budget to something else, like buying a colony on Mars or funding a real-life Jurassic Park, the Saudi Pro League will instantly deflate back to nothing. So what is the moral of the story here? The moral is that modern football is an absolute cesspool of greed and corruption. We know this. But the spectacular failure of the Saudi Pro League actually gives us a tiny microscopic glimmer of hope. It proved that while money can buy you players, it cannot buy you a soul. It cannot buy the passion of a freezing rain-soaked crowd singing their hearts out for a local boy making his debut. It cannot buy history, it cannot buy culture, and it cannot buy genuine relevance. Saudi Arabia spent $2 billion to build a mirage in the desert. From afar, it looked like an oasis of world-class football, but once the players and the fans actually got there, they realized it was just empty sand. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe, leave a like, and remember, if someone offers you $1 billion to go work in a 110-degree desert, at least make sure your locker comes with a working air conditioner.